Hi, I'm Lydia. I'm on the Claude Code team at Anthropic. I created this course because I want to give you a better understanding of how Claude Code works behind the scenes, so that you can truly personalize it to your code base and your workflows. In this course, we'll be talking about the agentic loop, how your prompt is assembled, and what the model actually sees. And then we'll be talking about the features in Claude Code and why we use them. CLAUDE.md, permissions, plan mode, skills, hooks, plugins, MCP, you name it. Everything to truly personalize Claude Code and get the best results out of it. With this deeper understanding of Claude Code, you can master agentic engineering. But the most important thing when working with Claude Code, again, is that the model is stateless. It has no in-session memory, no memory between the calls. Every time we call the model, it essentially starts from zero. Yeah, so it's up to the harness to provide all the state. So everything, your files, your conversation history, your entire setup, your environment, that's all Claude Code. But how does Claude Code give that? So just to kind of go back to our prompt, behind the scenes, like the moment you press enter, Claude Code assembles all of this data into one big request, into one big assembled prompt. So way more than we just have, that's only in user one. So first we have the tool schemas. You don't have to know much about tools yet, but these define every action that Claude Code can take on your behalf. So bash, edit, read, agent, web fetch. There's a bunch more. These are all in our docs, all the tools. And each one, it's of course visualized differently here, but it's actually a JSON schema. So we have the name, the description, and the input shape that this prompt has. So the model can read it, or now sees like, okay, if I want to do something, I know that the harness could run a bash command or an edit command. That's good to know. Again, the model cannot run that. The model will just send it back to the harness, but we'll see that in a moment. Then we also have the system prompt, and this is just hard-coded into Claude Code itself. Anthropic adds this to the harness, and this tells the model who it is, what tone it should have, the coding conventions, security rules that we as Anthropic want to enforce, all that stuff. We also have your environment. So that's the entire environment of your coding session. So the operating system, your shell, which model you're running, your Git branch, all that stuff. So Claude Code captures this whenever you start a session. Okay, and then lastly, and this is kind of the most important one for us, that's the messages array or the conversation array. So you can see here that we have our own prompt. So we have the add a test for calc. But we also have the CLAUDE.md file contents, if we have a CLAUDE.md file, and a list of all the skills that we might have in our project. We'll talk a bit more about skills later on, but this is a list of skills and only their names and description. This is progressive disclosure. We will talk a bit more about this later. But so the first message that we're sending to the model also has our CLAUDE.md file contents, the skills, and then finally our prompt. Now, of course, realistically, this looks something like this. And if you've used our SDK or something like that, you should be very familiar with this structure. This is just a JSON request body to the messages API. One kind of subtle thing I do want to say is that the model doesn't read JSON. It's up to the API to internally turn this into the tokens. The model only understands these tokens, of course, not plain JSON. But that's up to the API side, so either Anthropic API or Bedrock, all that stuff. So now finally the API gets sent, or the request gets sent to the API. So now the model sees this request and starts reasoning. It sees the entire assembled prompt. It's well, the user wants to add a test in utils.ts, but nowhere in our assembled prompt have we added this file yet. So it can't do anything. But what it does see is that in our tool schema, we have a read tool call. So it does understand okay, if I don't have access to something, then just use this read tool call. So the response of the model here, or the API, is an assistant message with this tool call. And in your network, you might see tool use. And this again is a hint to the harness that it wants to read this file. So this starts that first message. So only now, when the API has responded, will it show that read tool call in your CLI. Now behind the scenes, this might run fs read file or whatever you're using, bun. But that's again up to the harness because that can use sf read file. Eventually, the file contents also come back as a tool result. And then finally, when it's all successful, it again reassembles that entire prompt with the exact messages and everything else above. I just kind of didn't want to clutter it, but this should look the exact same. The only thing that's added here is, again, the assistant message to the messages array, and then also now the tool result. So in this case, you can just imagine that might be the contents of the file it just read. Please understand that this is, of course, kind of pseudocode. Normally, these are just like, again, the JSON objects. Don't take this too literally, but it's more just the idea. Plan mode is kind of like permission mode. You know, we're kind of telling Claude, like, hey, don't code anything yet. Don't touch anything. But I kind of want to remember that loop diagram back where the model emits a tool call and then the harness executes it. But how do we know that what it's executing is actually stuff that we want? So in our Claude settings JSON, we can also define specific permissions. And I have this pretty early on in the workshop because I do think it's important that you understand the control you can have over Claude Code and make sure that it won't run anything that you don't want running on your machine. So first we have an allow list. So this is a list that runs with no prompt. So if you've ever run any command, like maybe here now I can say design or just make it dark mode. I haven't added any permissions yet, so I think hopefully it will ask me if it can, if it can edit it, because I haven't told it that I'm okay with editing anything yet. But honestly, this is kind of annoying to like babysit it like this. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure you're going to do a good job. So we can either set auto mode, but permissions are a bit more deliberate. So first we have allow, so we can always say like, okay, if the tool call is like npm run, yeah, just do it. Like, don't ask me. If it's a git commit, maybe you're also always okay with that. But if it's a git push, please don't do that. Like, don't touch any of my remotes. That's fine. If you always wanted to ask, I mean, removing, honestly, I kind of always have it in ask. It's annoying to have it in deny because then you just end up with so many like stale files that should have been deleted. So if there's an RM, just ask, and you can also have a default mode. Okay, the best thing I think is to control this with our built-in / command called permissions. I'm just going to kind of exit this if you don't mind. So we can run permissions here. And here you can add a new rule if you want. You can also just see the other rules. The only kind of annoying thing is that you have to know which tools are available and what you like how you kind of write this permission type code. But this is a very easy way to add these permission rules. Otherwise, we just have to do it explicitly. So we can go to .claude, settings.json, and in here we can have like deny, ask, all these things. But we just added another command, which I really like. I'm just gonna restart it. And that is fewer permission prompts. And what this does, I'm just going to show you. I mean, this is like a brand new laptop, so I'm curious if it'll see anything. It'll go through all your transcripts, and it will try to find the tool calls that you've been asked the most. So if you've already run a couple sessions and you're like, I always see the same type of tool calls and I keep allowing this, but how do I add this to my permissions? Fewer permission prompts is really good for that. Let's see what it actually ended up with. Oh, so here. So it saw that I kept just like accepting my linear MCP server and the bash bun run type check. So it added 2 of these to my settings JSON without like me having to touch it. It also skipped a few, and it will tell you why. Instructions say when in doubt, leave it out. It's already auto allowed by Claude, so no rule needed. Mutating up. So it's also like very conservative with what it does add. So it still thinks like, okay, is what I'm allowing actually safe? Is it like maybe like redundant? Do I not want to add it? So anyway, I just wanted to point that out. Because if you've been using Claude Code for a while, there are so many kind of newish commands that can be very useful to your workflow.
So question, the settings then, since we have them, and I guess as a personal global setting and then per project, what happens if they collide with each other?
So the highest one has like as precedence, if that makes sense. So if you have something in managed settings, so all the way up to your enterprise, that will always take precedence. Then it's like your user and then goes down per project. So basically, we want to make sure that as an individual team member, individual's team member's permissions cannot overwrite what your team or your company set up for you. So the highest one's the one that's most up. So it's almost like reverse hierarchy in that sense, where the one that's closest to root wins, and then it goes all the way down. I'm just gonna add a deny rule here with maybe bash, or actually I'm gonna add a deny rule here with edit package.json, and I'm just gonna see what happens. Git. Oh, because it created it for me, right? Wait, don't save. So this is just the settings that Claude made for me, which is actually pretty nice. But now I also want to add a deny rule, and I just want to see what happens. So if I want to deny maybe, edit package.json. And now I'm going to still ask Claude to edit it for me. So I'm just going to actually change this model to Haiku, because again, this is just a very simple task. It's fine. So I'm going to update the version in package.json to, I don't know what it is right now, to 1. Now, hopefully, my permissions were set up correctly, and it would be like, can't do that. Oh. Ignore it. Or actually, I'm not sure if I now prompted it to ignore the permissions. We'll see. Hopefully not. No. Yeah, so it says like, oh, I can't do that. So even if this was a tool call coming from the model, it won't run it. So this is like a great way to add more control over what Claude can and cannot do in your environment. We've seen how we can shape the behavior with CLAUDE.md and how we can guarantee it with permissions. But both of these are kind of passive. There's often like a lot of workflows or a lot of steps that we want to take in Claude Code, and we kind of want to do it multiple times. And in that case, we can use skills. So a skill is just a markdown file with a specific procedure. So something you'd otherwise have to like re-explain to Claude every time. It's just repeated, multi-steps, and in this case, it's just specific to our project. So this could be anything like deployment or integrations, a Q&A loop, anything that you want to do multiple times, but you just don't want to keep typing the same prompt over and over. So actually, before I start typing it myself, a really nice prompt that I like to use is skill creator. I believe this is built into Claude Code. Sometimes I add different plugins to my environment, and then I forget whether this was built in or if I added it. I believe this one is built in. And this one makes it super easy to add your custom skills. So for this one, let's say, what skill would you like to have worked on? I might just do like a very simple code reviewer skill. I don't want to do too much. I just want to see what it ends up with. Also, what I want to show here is like if you have a question or an example, the first thing that should come to your mind is like, has Claude Code already automated this? Or do I really have to go into the code base and code it myself? For a lot of these questions, you could just ask Claude and let it do it for you. So it's kind of like updating your mindset is like, how much of my daily life can I Claudify that way? And the nice thing also is that we have a lot of configuration options within a skill. We can also set the model here. So in this case, it's just reviewing code. So I can just tell it always use Sonnet. Even though I'm on Opus, whenever this specific skill is invoked, I want to use Sonnet. Or Haiku in some cases. What's also nice is, for example, if we never want our model to review our code, we just want to do it like a slash command, we can also like use disable model invocation. True. And in this case, by setting that, we're not sending it to the model, we're only keeping it locally. So the model can never invoke this skill, only us using it as a slash command. If we want the opposite, if we only ever want the model to do it, we can set user invocable false. And I know honestly, this should just be one front matter setting. It's two, and they're kind of like negating each other. Just accept it for now, we might change it. But by doing that, just adding this one, now it's no longer a slash command like we've just run, only the model can do it. So that's kind of how you get more control over skills as well. Another thing that's kind of nice is that you can pass arguments to it. And that's just with the normal like arguments syntax. So maybe if we had a skill like find, I don't know, arguments, bugs, or maybe if we had like a deploy skill, maybe we could have like deploy, and this is like deploys our our code base to either staging or production. Yeah, we can use Sonnet for that, and we can just have like deploy. Maybe first it's like run the tests, bundle the app deploy to our environment. Again, nothing is set up, so I know when I will ask Claude, it will be like, what am I supposed to do? There are no tests and I can't deploy. But here you can also say like deploy to, for example, arguments. And now what I can do is if I ran, I'm just going to rename this real quick. Rename this to deploy. Going to reload plugins. If I now run deploy, I can just do like deploy staging, for example. And now in our skills, it will always then deploy to staging. So this is, I find, very useful. You have a lot of control over skills.